Hi. I'm not sure if this is working. Yes, I think it is. Yep, okay. I'm just going to assume there's someone out there listening. My name's Sally Mathrick. I'm here to talk about immune function. I'm just wondering if I can do it without just looking and talking to myself. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about immune function. Is anybody out there? Okay, well, I might just run through it. If anyone's out there, just let me know. Oh, someone did a love heart. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll get going. So here we are at Pandaversity, the pandemic. I never imagined this would be happening, and so here we are, all stuck at home, and I'm sure a few of us are a little bit scared about what's going on. I mean, what is going on? We don't really know what's going on, but we're here. And so I'm going to be delivering some ideas for you. Oh yeah, great. There's heaps of people there. Hey, hi. There's heaps of things we can do. So let's have a think about that. And I guess what I'd like to do is provide a few kind of attitudes and strategies, as much as what you can put into your body, as much as like the way in which you're moving through this, which can all impact how our immune system works, because our immune system's so amazing. Because we know that there are no proven remedies to COVID-19. So what we know is COVID-19 is the coronavirus disease 2019. That's what that stands for. It's caused by a virus called the SARS-CoV-2, which is the SARS coronavirus number 2. And you'll probably remember there was a SARS epidemic in 2002, and then there was another one called MERS, MERS, in 2015, which were focused not around the whole world. It was contained. This is a similar virus to those viruses, but it has a few novel aspects, so new aspects, which make it function a little bit different to everything else. So it's an enveloped capsule, and it's a encapsulated virus with spiky glycoproteins. You've probably seen the photos. And it gains entry to the body through a receptor called the ACE2 receptor inside the lungs. And that's what causes respiratory illness, and then it actually kind of goes further and deeper into the body and affects other parts of the body that has this same receptor, which is a lot of the body. And in that process of doing it, it creates a whole heap of inflammation, and it confuses the immune system for a little while. And it's that inflammation which is just like going off inside the body, which is pretty much why people are dying and why some people are more susceptible than others. So we know that the susceptible age groups are more the older people, or people with already have got inflammatory disorders. So we don't have any cures. So I'm not about to say this is a cure or this is a way to absolutely prevent it, but these are ways that you can definitely bolster up your own immune function. So to build resilience during this crazy, crazy time. And all of this stuff I've come across in my own reading, kind of geeking out on sort of scientific stuff from my students who've been also geeking out on scientific stuff. So I've been reading their work. So thanks to the students at Southern School of Natural Therapies, and also my colleagues from there. We've been talking about it a lot, and also some of my colleagues down at Gould's in Tasmania. I've poached a couple of the studies that they pulled out as well. So it's not just my work, it's obviously standing on the shoulders of giants. Okay, so we're basically, first off though, just acknowledging that we're in a time of great uncertainty. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of people losing their incomes, their job security, huge shifts economically, there's huge shifts socially, politically, emotionally. We're in a lockdown period, and so there's a whole heap of stuff going on. But the other thing is we don't actually know what's going on really, and we don't know how long this is going to go on for. All of that just creates a huge amount of insecurity because we don't have a clear plan ahead. Yeah. So essentially, that in itself is challenging. And one of the things I could suggest perhaps is that just don't think about it all the time. Schedule yourself periods of time when you can think about it, and then let it go, and just sort of recognize that that this will change, we know that, but if you allow yourself to, your brain to really process it just for a moment in time, or for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever you want every day, and then not worry about it any longer. Focus on what you can control, and you can control quite a lot, and be selective about the exposure you have to fear overall, whether that's sensationalized media or people who are really, really scared and who've been watching sensationalized media. Try to bring yourself into the moment of now, of course, which is where it all happens, and enjoy a lot of humour as much as you can. There's some great humour going on around the internet at the moment. So the first thing, there are basically kind of three main things I want to talk about, and part 3 has a couple of sections to it. So first off, I just think breathing is crucial, and so a lot of people who are doing Pandaversity are yogis, and many of you probably are yogis as well. So I'm not going to teach you anything you probably don't know, but there is this thing called the vagal tone. So vagal tone is essentially the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, which connects when I was at uni, I learned that it connects the brain with the gut, but in fact it connects all of the body with the brain, the gut, and so many of the organs, including the heart. And when we allow that nerve to be toned, when we stimulate that nerve, it shifts the body into the rest and digest phase, or arm, or mode. Actually, it's a mode of the nervous system, as opposed to the fear, fight, flight kind of edge of the nervous system, the sympathetic, get out there and get them. This vagus nerve, when we do vagal breathing or vagal toning through breathing, that then actually helps us to shift into this method or this mode of our nervous system. So the way you do that, one of the really simple ways, essentially you breathe out longer than you breathe in for. That's the bottom line. But there is a breath which we've been practicing a lot with my students, and so it's essentially just breathe out, so you're very relaxed. Breathe in for the count of 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for the count of 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now breathe out for the count of 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Have a normal breath. You may have sensed a slight shift in your energy. And then if you just do a couple of normal breaths, and then you can do it again, or you could do 3 of them in a row. So it's breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and then breathing out for 8. So do it once and then have a breath, or do it twice and have a breath, or 3 times, or 3 times in a row, and then let it go. And you can do it virtually everywhere, and you will just sense that slight shift. And if you allow your brain to also go, oh yeah, great, here we are, then that can be, it's a really lovely way of doing it. So just bringing yourself into the moment. So if you do kind of get that surge of anxiety when you hear of someone, or someone sort of sprays you with their fear and their freak out, then you can just do that and ground yourself in the moment, and it will really help to shift your mode over to that vagal tone mode, and which is just where the repair happens, and when your nervous system is informing your immune system and your digestive system and your heart and everything. You're much more flexible, you're much more wise, all of those things happen. So that was the first one. The second thing is, the main way we prevent COVID-19 from getting it and from sharing it around is by social distancing and by hygiene. So we know that. I think I don't need to go through that because that's been fairly poorly expressed by the Australian government, quite well expressed by the New Zealand government, but we do know that we definitely need to stay away from each other in terms of the virus being able to stay in the air for 30 minutes. It stays on paper for about 24 hours, and it can stay on plastic and steel for about 72 hours alive. So then it's just a matter of touching it and putting it in our mouths. So this is the issue that we need to be mindful of all the time, because it's so much more contagious than the influenza virus, and that is because of this the way it connects to the ACE2 receptor, as far as I understand. So So we know that it's more contagious than the flu, but we also know, according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, that 80% who contract the virus aren't really going to know. They're not really going to have too many effects. Like they might feel a little bit of a sore throat or whatever, so they'll just carry it, but they won't actually develop COVID-19 as a respiratory distress, illness. 15% of the people will have a flu. They'll be in bed and it'll go on for 10 days or even longer, depending on the person, I guess. But they will be able to recover from that, but they will be bedridden, like a really bad flu. And then you've got 5% of the people who will possibly need to have respiratory support in order to keep breathing because the inflammation will be so bad. So really what we're doing is we're really sort of staying away from each other, because the 20% of the people who will get this will have a really hard time. So we have to remember that the virus shell, that envelope, basically gets destroyed by soap, and that's why washing your hands with soap is important, but also wiping down surfaces with soap. So it's something to do with the soap saponins, I imagine, or some sort of compound in the soap which actually destroys the virus. So we don't have to put antibiotics everywhere and destroy the microbiome of the earth. We just need to put soap to destroy this virus, which is quite a different being to a bacteria. And so that's really important to do that and to think about that. So that's the thing about washing your hands and doing all that. And the other thing that I learned is that if you're using an alcohol wipe, it has to be over 60% alcohol in order for the capsule to be broken. So 30 minutes in the air. So that does mean that a mask is going to be a good idea, particularly if you're going out around places where there are lots of people who might be carrying it. 24 hours on paper and 72 on plastic and steel. So we know that, which is great, but I guess that the point that I really wanted to put forward, and this did come from a public health official in New Zealand, which was like, don't think about how you're going to catch the virus or if you're going to catch the virus, because essentially if you're in that mindset, you're fearful, you're scared, and you're isolating from everybody. And that in itself is closing you off and disconnecting you from everyone else, and also makes you suspicious of everybody else. And of course, that in itself creates a sense of separation from the whole. And, we are people of, we're tribal by nature. We've evolved together with groups and clans. So if we're suddenly feeling like we have to isolate ourselves and everyone's out to get us and this virus is out to get us, then that's not doing anything for our nervous system or for our immune system, because it's all interlinked. So we go away from that vagal tone, rest and digest, and we go into the fear, fight, flight, which momentarily will rise and increase our immune system, but over time wears us out and then lends us more susceptible. So if we take instead that attitude of, I'm doing this so that I don't hurt my elderly neighbour down the road, or I'm doing this, I'm protecting my parents, or I'm doing this to be able to, reduce the suffering of other humans on the planet. That whole thing of just coming from that space means that I am connected and that I am caring about people around me, and that that I'm in service of other things, which makes me feel good and valuable and in control, as opposed to being scared and victim and disconnected and out of control. So I just thought that was such a clever messaging from the New Zealand health people, and I wanted to pass that on, because I really think that that is the way forward, that we feel in control, because at this time when there's hardly any control, we actually do have control about how we're responding to that. So the other thing was, just to keep in mind how challenged everybody is with this situation. And so everyone's going to respond to challenges in a different way. Some people need to buy heaps of toilet paper. And I think we just have to be compassionate towards some people who need to respond in that way, So we know that if we just can acknowledge that everyone is having a tough time, and then with that understanding feel a little bit more compassionate, then that's also going to make it a much easier process. And another colleague suggested, if you can practice random acts of kindness at any point over the next few months, that's going to go a long way, and you really don't know how far those things can go, at the time like that. So number one was the vagal tone breath, breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and out for 8, and just calming yourself down. Number 2 is the attitude with which you practice these practices of hygiene, so washing your hands with soap and clearing the surfaces around you, and also distancing so that you're not necessarily spraying anything on anyone who might be more susceptible than you. Okay, and the third one is the one I think you're all wanting to know about, which is immune enhancement. What I thought I might do is just talk and then go through the questions if there are questions, and I'll go from the bottom up, I guess, to see if there are any, if I can answer them. So the first thing about immune system, which I think is really interesting and not that many people know, is that actually the first part of your immune system isn't your skin or the surface or the barriers, it's actually your heat shield. So this comes more from the Chinese, but also the tradition of hydrotherapy, which is what one of the basis of natural medicine or naturopathy is, this nature cure concept, and the idea of how is the blood flowing through the body, because the blood carries the heat, and so how is that flowing through the body? Is it in a way that's harmonious and allowing the whole body to have a heat shield around it? So that idea of keeping that vital heat energy moving through your body is really crucial for your immune system. So exercising regularly is obviously great for many reasons, but also because it's going to allow the movement of vitality through your whole system. And so we also know that in terms of hydrotherapy, there is evidence to show that a whole heap of immunological factors increase when you have short bursts of cold. So you've probably seen the icebergers, the people who sort of swim throughout all of winter, and they've done studies on those guys showing how their certain immune markers are much higher than people who don't do that, because there's something about this kind of mini stress to the body which bolsters the system. So the idea of having a warm shower, and when you're nice and warm, at the end putting it on cool, maybe not cold straight away, but starting with cool, just having a cool burst and allowing yourself to to breathe in, breathe out a couple of times and then turn it off. So you'd start with maybe just 5 seconds, but 30 seconds ideally. Give it a good go, and then turn the shower off, and then your skin basically, because the cold is coming on, it's going to contract. All of the blood's going to go, ooh, and then as soon as you turn it off, whoosh, you get this heat again. So it's almost like it's a way of getting movement in the body, and it certainly wakes you up. So there is an idea of that impacting this hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and stimulating that sympathetic nervous system response for a short period of time, which kind of ups your protection basically. And so it tends to have over time a detrimental effect on the pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are the mediators of this excessive inflammation, that if you do get COVID-19, and if it is a really bad case, then you're basically reducing the propensity for that, essentially. Long bow, but it is there. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one is keep your digestive system really powerful. So that means keep your digestive juices flowing well. So that vagal tone is part of that. So relaxing the system so you can digest well is very much part of it, but also making sure you're having good foods, you're eating them slowly in a relaxed way, chewing them properly. If you've got heartburn, get that sorted out, have apple cider vinegar or lemon juice on your foods, those kinds of things to prime the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, or even to prime the saliva in your mouth before it gets to your stomach. So that in itself, so we know that if the virus comes into the body, the hydrochloric acid will basically destroy it. so that's good. But the other thing is that the better your gastrointestinal tract's going to work, the better you're going to be absorbing the nutrients that you need for your immune system to work well. And also, if you've got a good gut pH, so you've got a good level of saliva and hydrochloric acid, etc., then you're going to be providing an environment for a really healthy microbiome. So we know that the gut microbiome, so the bacteria of the gut, are crucial to immunological function, and in fact it's seeming that that is the seat of the immune system, actually. So that's part of the immune enhancement. So first was keep your vital heat moving through your body, and second is make sure your gut is working really well to be able to digest well and to keep the microbes in the gut healthy. So the next part is to ensure your mucous membrane integrity is intact. So mucous membranes are essentially, epithelial cells which are nice and slimy. So keep yourself well hydrated. It was going around for a while that if you just keep drinking, that you'll wash the virus down, which is an interesting thought. Maybe that's true, but certainly if you're keeping hydrated, then your mucous membranes will be more moist, and that's important. If you tend towards allergies, so you tend towards hay fevers or those kinds of things, doing things to support that allergic response is important. So drying yourself out with things that like antihistamines is okay if that's the only way you've got, but it would be more ideal to be able to bring more moisture to that area, because you want the mucous membranes to be nice and moist, essentially. One thing that they do in the Ayurvedic tradition, which some of you might already know about, is neti pot douching, and I forgot to bring my neti pot, but essentially it's a saline douche for the nasal passages, and you can just basically you get warm water, put a little bit of salt in, which is the same level of salinity as your blood, essentially 0.09 millimoles per litre from memory. Anyway, you just basically pour it up one nostril and you allow the salt to come out the other side. So you do it in the shower, and you basically make sure you move your head forward so it doesn't go down the back of your neck, and you can do that either side. And really just washing through the mucous membranes, but it's also tonifying it with the salt water. And so inside of that mucous membrane, there are these little pieces of lymph tissue, which are called mucosal associated lymphoid tissue, and they've got a lot of defense mechanisms for us. So essentially it's sort of tonifying the mucous membranes of the nose so that you can, so those little mucoid associated lymphoid tissue are working well, and there's kind of like a tonifying aspect, so it's just keeping it in its nice balance range. So that's one idea. Another is just to avoid irritants. So if you're a smoker, ideally stop smoking. At least really reduce your smoking. Just wear patches instead, because smoking is going to be irritating all of the respiratory system. I thought also, avoiding parabens and fragrances that are fake and synthetic, because they too have these micro kind of irritations to the whole gastrointestinal tract. So your personal care products, looking through them, making sure that there's no synthetics, like benzoates and parabens are the worst, but there's a whole heap of other things. So just watching out what's going in through there, so making sure that there's nothing too irritating going into your gastrointestinal tract, your respiratory tract. The other thing for mucous membranes is that they need certain nutrients, including vitamin A and zinc and beta-carotene. So I'll talk about them again in a minute. So my friends from Tassie, they in Goulds, they found a good little study about green tea gargling. Now this was for some older people, some elderly people in a nursing home. They'd all had the vaccine for influenza. So I know we're not talking about influenza, but I think that there's a level here. So green tea has catechins in them, or catechins. I've always read that word. I never really read it out loud. So they have catechins in them, CATECHIN. And essentially that's a compound in the green tea. So they had 76 people gargling with green tea extract 3 times a day. and that was the test group, and then they had 48 people gargling a tea that didn't have that compound, that particular green tea compound in it. So both did the gargling 3 times a day for 3 months. Basically, the group that had the green tea with the catechins in it it wasn't as strong as a Japanese green tea. It was almost half the strength of a Japanese green tea, so it wasn't very pleasant apparently. And I don't know how long they gargled for. That wasn't actually written. I didn't see that in the study. But they found a significant result because of the people who had the green tea, 1.3% of those people, which was only one resident, got a flu that year, but 10% of the people who didn't have the catechins in the gargle got the flu. So it was a pretty good study because the thing is that there were more people in the test group and only one of them, 1.3%, got influenza, whereas 10% of the people who did the gargling without the catechins didn't do that. So it's an interesting study, and exactly, I mean, it needs more evidence, as everything does, but gargling green tea for elderly people who are particularly susceptible to a respiratory infection could be something that could help them through. And so I can, if anyone wants to, I can share that reference too. So that's the mucosal membrane. So our immune system, this is the last little bit now, so I'm obviously not going to go for an hour, but the last little bit is the immune system is so intricate and so amazing, but we have it's a profoundly complex system, and I'm hardly going to be able to give it justice to really explain it, but it interacts with our hormone system, it interacts with our psychology, it interacts with our nervous system. So that whole idea of it all interplaying means that what you do in your mind and how you perceive things will actually be affecting your immune status. So, and we have to also remember the microbiome play an enormous role as well. So it's really complex. We've got kind of this basic innate immunity, which is what we talked about before, really, with the mucosal associated lymphoid tissue, even the skin, and maybe to some extent the heat barrier as well. You've also got the gut and the gastric associated lymphoid tissue as well. And also the basic innate immunity are white blood cells inside of some of the white blood cells inside of the body that just go around to protect and mop up like funguses or whatever's in us, just cleaning us up. So anything that happens to be there, it's just like a surveillance system. So that's the innate immunity. And then we've got a more specific immunity, and that's the type of immunity that we get vaccinations for, or that we develop a resistance to by catching the disease. So chickenpox, for example, I had chickenpox, developed immune bodies against it, and so now I no longer have chickenpox. So that specific immunity requires the intelligence of your immune system to work to create those specific antibodies, which it can do. So I think there's a level of having some confidence in yourself as well, that you can get through these things, that your body is an intelligent, very highly evolved organism. But we do have to make sure that we've got the right nutrition on board in order for those innate and those specific immune functions to work properly. So I'm going to tell you some foods to eat that can help boost that. Well, actually, first off, I'm going to go through the nutrients which are essential. So write these down. Selenium, but you don't need a huge amount of it. You can get that from 3 Brazil nuts a day, or 3 Brazil nuts, every other day should be enough. I think there's a little bit in garlic sometimes as well. Zinc, so oysters and pepitas, really helpful. Vitamin A and vitamin E, so you can Google that. Vitamin A, also beta-carotene, and I mentioned that earlier in terms of your mucosal health. Again, you've got to be really careful with supplements of some of these, in particular selenium, zinc, and vitamin A. You don't want to go supplementing without knowing what you're doing, because you can actually overdose on them. Vitamin E, really important, so all your nuts and seeds and your good fats. Vitamin D, so that's really important for us as we move further into winter, because we need to keep a good level. So we normally get vitamin D from the sunshine, hopefully, if you've been out, but if you've slapped all summer, then you're probably already a little bit low. And now that we've passed the equinox, we wouldn't be able to get it from being in Victoria, and we can't go to Queensland. So it might pay to look into some supplementation along that level. And I certainly have got my parents on vitamin D, and I feel confident that that's a really important thing for them. So we need to be mindful of that throughout the whole of winter, because towards midwinter and then moving into sort of August, people are really, really low by then. It's really important to have good proteins on board to be out for the body to be able to make these immunoglobulins. So we need to have good proteins on board. And so again, if you're a vegetarian, that means you do need to eat, legumes and nuts and seeds and whole grains. If you're a meat eater, make sure that you're preparing the meat so that it's you can actually absorb all of the protein in it. So marinade or slow cook and things like that. Garlic is really great. So garlic has got a huge immunological benefit for us. We normally need to have it raw in order to get that benefit, but you can always just add that to different different things, and it can be quite nice, like in hummus or guacamole, or putting it in with some lemon juice or in a salad dressing and those kinds of things, or in a vegetable dressing. You can also dress your veggies. So then you've got mushrooms, mushrooms and fungi. So of course, blows my mind every time, but mushrooms or the fungi is a kingdom, much like animals, which have whales, humans, and birds in it, and and then we've got plants, which have got like so many species of plants. Mushrooms or fungi are their own kingdom, so they're so different to us, and it seems that they have so many solutions for us. If you have seen any of Paul Stammett's work, he's a mycologist over in America. I certainly recommend checking him out. In terms of immunological support, using mushrooms in your, if you like mushrooms, some people don't like mushrooms, but if you don't like them, just make them into a powder so you can't really taste them. But eating mushrooms a couple of times a week is a really good idea. So, and go for a variety of mushrooms. So shiitake are probably the best ones to have, which are the normal fruiting body mushrooms. But also there's a whole heap of fungi supports that we can use, which are polyphore mushrooms, and the traditional Chinese medicine has that covered really well. But there are heaps of really good mushrooms, but with supplements, don't do like what some people do with toilet paper. You don't need to go and buy them all, because you might not need them, and someone who does need them might need them more. And so that's one thing I think about. There's a level of safety, but if you were to eat enoki and then shiitake and then Swiss browns and then some good little button mushrooms, and you've got lots of good, there's even like oyster mushrooms, and there's a whole range of mushrooms. If you were enjoying those in your meal regularly, then that's going to be great, and then if we need to boost someone's immune system more, then we start coming in. So if you're one of those 20% people who are more susceptible due to respiratory illness or immunocompromised, then talk to your health practitioner about the suitability of that for you. So just be mindful. Another really good thing to think about is the Jewish antibiotics, which is chicken soup. And I really do think over the years I've sort of, maybe I just believe it and I love it. I don't eat chickens very often, but when I do, I always make soup out of the bones. And I think that there's something quite good about that. And obviously trying to get organic and, humanely reared chickens is always good. So that idea of boiling up those and then putting lots of brown onion skins, and then making up a really good broth with to put in the freezer, so that if anyone does get sick, you've got it there and you can just put that into everything. So eating plant foods, mostly plant foods, especially ones that are high in antioxidants. So all the coloured fruits, so berries, kiwi fruits, purple grapes, goji berries, trying for local and fresh fruit and vegetables, nuts, seeds and legumes. So the antioxidant rich, building up your supply of those antioxidants is going to reduce your body's inflammatory response if you were to get COVID-19. So you're basically helping to, reducing all of the inflammatory foods, which are deep fried foods, processed foods, things that have been kind of dumbed down or deadened, vitality wise, but also those plant foods, what I just mentioned, all those coloured foods, and the range of good diversity is also going to be feeding your gut microbiome some really good things, which means that it's going to be more intelligent, it's going to have a better response for your immune system. Also, vitamin C is a really, really crucial one. If you were going to supplement something, then you could supplement a little bit of vitamin C and perhaps a little bit of zinc if you're vegetarian. And the vitamin C, you don't really absorb much more than 600 milligrams every time you dose, so you don't need to dose too high on that anyway. There has been, and so that as a preventative is a great idea because again, it's reducing that inflammation. There's been some evidence, I think, from China that IV vitamin C has been successfully used to reduce inflammation, in COVID-19 people. So it's a potential that we could use that. There was also another story about that I sent. I think it was in The Guardian. It was essentially that they had centrifuged some blood from someone who had recovered from COVID-19, who'd gone into the disease state and recovered, and they basically centrifuged out some of the serum and extracted the immunoglobulins that they had created and gave that to someone. So that's also something I read in The Guardian, which I think is fairly non-biased. And so potentially, our own immunological intelligence could very well help us and others get over it as well. So I think that there are more solutions than just a vaccine. So lifestyle, good sleep, get enough sleep. Let's face it, if you can sleep between 10 and 2, 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., that's the time when your body repairs itself the most. So if you can get those 4 hours in, fantastic. And if you can get 8 hours in, top up while you can, I say. Maintain healthy exercise, keep your stress levels in check, tune in with people that you love and that you like and that you want to hang out with, on the phone or wherever. All of these things are integral in your immune system working well. And I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was just how that ultimately you are the sovereign person of your human body. You have sovereignty over yourself, and so you choose about what you eat, and you choose about what you tune into and what you take on board. You also choose how you respond to that. So I don't think that that's really emphasized enough. I think that we need to have more confidence in ourselves as human beings on the planet in 2020. And step up into that, because I think that we are being offered an amazing opportunity to shift a system that has not been working for 99.9% of the beings on the planet. And we are in a health. We're not just in a health pandemic. We're also in a biodiversity crisis and a climate crisis as well. So. Fun times, but I guess the thing is that we are here and we are able to do something about it. So that's 38 minutes and 25 seconds of me speaking to myself. Thanks all these people for saying hello. Are there any questions? Hello. Yay. Hey, Danch. Is it a full breath in the count of 4 or just as much as we can breathe in 4 counts? Jagrita. So I guess I've learned that what you can do is count to your breathing rhythm. So if the 4 isn't enough, then count slower so that you get a good breath in. But it's not like a bellows breath or anything like that. So it's not meant to, you're not supposed to try too hard. It's just breathe in. And then with the 7, if the 7 feels a little bit too long, just count a bit faster. And then with the 8, if the 8 is too long, just count faster. So, because the overall concept is breathe in for a shorter period of time than you breathe out. And if you can hold for a little while, then that also just allows for that oxygenation of the system. So I hope that answers your question. What about age groups what about age group perceptibility? Ricarda Garland, I don't know what you mean by perceptibility. You have to clarify that for me. Is hand sanitizer more or less effective than soap? So look, I'm a bit sensitive actually. My hands are just inflamed from all the hand sanitizer. So I think if the hand sanitizer is 60% or more alcohol, then it will be effective as soap. I don't know if all the I don't know about all the hand sanitizers out there. I'm going to start making some actually because I do have some alcohol. But yeah, so I think if you check the hand sanitizer and make sure that it's got more than 60% alcohol, then it will work. And of course, when you're out, it's a handy thing. But gloves are also a great idea. Yeah, so can't get good masks. I saw something, Ricardo, the other day about making your own mask. I haven't got a mask either, but I'm thinking I'll make my own out of hankies. So there was this really beautiful Japanese lady doing it, and I think we can make our own if we need to. And particularly just if you're out shopping, and there have been a few other people doing other things out shopping. I've seen some photos of like people wearing, scuba masks and things like scuba diving equipment. We are tribal. Yeah, thanks, Megan Stevens. You can make them from scarves. Yes. Hi, Jude. Ricarda, have had cold showers for decades. It's amazing. Yeah, it's great. And I mean, it really does freshen you up, and not recommending it the night before. Yep. Is yogurt good for the gut? And what about cheese? Depends who you are. Yes, I think a small amount of yogurt is pretty good for most people most of the time if it's organic and if it's got good bacteria in it. And cheese, I think I love cheese, but it depends on, some people do react to cheese. Could you send a list of irrigators to avoid? Irrigators, a list of irrigators. Are you talking about irritants perhaps? So, I guess a list of irritants to avoid. Like diesel would be good to be able to avoid that, but that's obviously in the streets, not as much now. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I guess it's sort of, so Ricardo, I'd send you off to the Environmental Working Group. So that's at ewg.org, and they're a group of environmental scientists who are being paid by industry. And so they do a lot of research on what's good, and they've got a lot of personal care stuff. To be able to go through like a personal care database, and and so anything you're using in the house which has got a fragrance in it, that's generally quite irritating, unless it's eucalyptus oil or tea tree oil or something like an essential oil. Would the green tea be matcha? Sarah, hello. It didn't say it. It just said it was formulated by a Tokyo company, so good chance. The total catechin content was 90%, including 64% epigallocatecinic gallate. I'll send you the thing, a whole heap of compounds with different percentages. So they had standardized what it was. I'd assume that it would be a Japanese tea, and it probably is matcha, I'd say, but I'm not sure, dull. But I can send you the thingy. Jude, do you think warm sea salt water gargling would help? Well, look, I don't know. I don't know, because I did see someone sent me something the other day saying that salt water wasn't helpful, but I haven't read anything about it. The idea of the neti douching is essentially more around optimizing mucosal surface health than preventing COVID from attaching there. But I would assume you actually are going to wash it away, because the receptor that it attaches to is only deep in the lungs. So this ACE2 receptor, it's only in the alveoli, which is really deep into the lungs. So if you do have the virus inside of you, and if you can wash it away, then that's going to be supportive, All right, yes, Paul Stamets is great. I interviewed him once. He's a lovely man. Lots of good stories. Chicken soup hits the spot, sure does, Sarah. Thank you. No worries, Ricardo. I'm glad you like the info. Yes, and Sarah, so much about just be healthy now, and be really reduce inflammation. All of that sort of stuff is just helpful. Thanks, Cal. Thanks, Kay. Thanks, Katie. Hi, Katie. My pleasure. Hey, Rebecca. Thanks, Leah. Does D3 need to be taken with K2? Is it safe to be taken by everyone? Tan. Well, thanks for the question. I am not 100% sure about if it's safe for everyone. Like I was dosing as a naturopath with clients. I'd done some study with a man called Michael Hollick. I think it was Michael Hollick, someone Hollick. And he was dosing super high, so I was always pulling it back a little bit, but still dosing higher than what's recommended. And then just recently, I've been reading more around dosage, and then I've kind of become a bit more conservative again. So D3, look, the recommended RDI is something like 600 or something, really low. I think it's fairly safe to be taken by everyone around 2,000. And that's a little bit higher than I feel confident saying to the whole world. But yeah, so maybe 1,000 to 2,000 a day should be okay, particularly during the winter, and particularly when there's a pandemic on. I think that's safe. The K2 is different. Look, a lot of people, K2 is the one that they inject into babies. It's very important for blood coagulation. It's more specific for people who have cardiovascular disease or cardiovascular risks. I wouldn't be recommending that for everybody, but I'd certainly be saying eat green leafy vegetables a lot because they're very good for you. So the D3, I'd say, is safe for everyone. I wouldn't say that K2 is, though. But thanks for the question. You're welcome, Nick. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Kate. Great. Glad you liked it, Jackie. Thanks so much for the advice. Okay, what are my thoughts? Thanks, Michael. What are my thoughts on medicinal herbs such as elder, astragalus, Siberian ginseng, mullein, etc.? Are they important if diet and other factors are good? Well, so look, I think all of them are amazing. Like, I'm a herbalist and I love all of those herbs, and all of them I think have a good role to play. I think astragalus is wonderful, particularly if you've had chronic illness for a period of time, or you're in that 20% range, or if you have been really stressed out and you keep getting small colds and things like that. Astragalus can be good. But astragalus and Siberian ginseng, they come from a long way away. We've got to think about the true costs of herbs. So one of the other hats that I wear is for the Naturopaths and Herbalists Association of Australia, and the thing that's really quite keen in my consciousness at the moment is that the incorrect use, but the overuse of herbs without knowing why you're using them. So yes, these herbs are good. Siberian ginseng can be really great in terms of licorice tea. Also good. So the adaptogens can be really helpful. Astragalus and Siberian ginseng. Elderflower is lovely, particularly for allergy type people. And mullein is very much a herbal medicine for inflammation and to increase mucilaginous nature of the lungs. So yes, for herbalists it's great to use it. If you know what you're doing, then definitely use them. But remember, like most naturopaths and herbalists spend 4 years at uni, so it's not like you just read a book and go, oh yeah, that's what I need, because there's always like, but what about this, and what about this, what about this, what about this? There's always aspects. So particularly, like, for example, with astragalus, because it's warming, if you have a fever, don't have astragalus because it can overheat you. So it's actually contraindicated to have with a fever. And even if it's a slight fever, it's like you don't want to be warming your body up more when it's already trying to fight something. So it's little things like that. So, you can find, there's lots of naturopaths around, and just ask someone that you know about if it's good for you. And if your diet and other factors are good, chances are you won't need the herbs. Except, of course, put herbs into your food all the time, like thyme, Use thyme, use rosemary, use garlic, use ginger, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that, parsley, all of those things. Really go hard on the herbs this winter in terms of your culinary herbs. Sarah, doing the breathing prior to eating enables better digestion and inhibits the fight-flight response. Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Tan, for vitamin C, given it's hard to get whole food powder at the moment, is sodium ascorbate as effective as ascorbic acid, which is preferred? Look, I think ascorbic acid is, I'm not up to date with the latest science on vitamin C, to tell you the truth. I don't know really the answer. But I would also say that if you were to look at good vitamin C rich foods, and because you can't absorb that much anyway every time you have it. So so you might be able to get it from, really good food sources. And I don't know about sodium ascorbate. I'm sorry, it's been a while. I remember ester C was one which was really, really easily absorbed. I remember reading a lot about that a decade ago or so. So now I just sort of stick with products I know. I'm sorry I haven't refreshed myself on that. Can't help you. Sorry. All right. They say some age groups are far more in danger than others. Yeah, that the older people are, which is kind of interesting as well, because those older people have had more disease states and they've got more immunological kind of information inside of themselves, in that they've already come across a whole heap of diseases that younger people haven't, just for the time on the planet. But I think a lot of the older people have got these other chronic disease states which lend them towards being more inflamed, which, so a lot of the deaths that we're hearing about there are from complications that are other disease states which are aggravated through the virus. So any particular recommendations for people with inflammatory conditions and compromised immune systems? Yeah, I reckon come and see a naturopath and get something sorted out for yourself. But pretty much everything that I've said is pretty much the way to go. So looking at antioxidants, and making sure you've got good minerals and all of those sorts of things. And I am doing, during the pandemic, I'm doing a $50 half an hour offer of a consultation online, and it's quite a good value thing, because I've been doing this for ages, and you have to fill out a form beforehand, give me a heap of information. We do 30 minutes on the dot, and then I send you a report with ideas. So for $50, if you are an inflamed person or with compromised immune system, then there's certainly things that I can help, but it's more a specific thing. So it's not one thing suits everyone. So I'd need to, it's sort of, and that I'm quite cautious of that, because except for lifestyle medicine, that suits most people. My pleasure. Mel, yeah, thanks for coming. Yes, irritants. So what are my thoughts on andrographis? Yeah, andrographis is great, Cal. Andrographis is another one of those herbs which, which it's a much more of an acute herb for immunological support. It's really good for the gut as well. Again, I think, if you were going to, I like andrographis. It's a good bitter herb. So, I don't really want to just say, yes, everyone should take some andrographis, because then we'll run out of andrographis for the people who really need it. It's probably good. I think echinacea is another nice one as well, for just a generalized immune tonic. And echinacea you can have as a tea. Andrographis is a bit too bitter as a tea. You need it as a tablet. You're welcome, love, Sarah. No wonder, no problems. Thanks, Linda. You're welcome. Okay. I do have preferred brands. I tend to use practitioner brands that I know, certain products which I tend to use. Sarah, look, I think dried mushroom powder is pretty good. If you can get organic, it's most important, because we want to make sure that, mushrooms tend to detoxify what's around them as well. So you want to make sure you're getting organic as much as possible with the mushrooms. Can you see the use of essential oils being beneficial, diffused, edible, topical? Nick, yeah, look, I think I'm really not one for the edible, like putting essential oils inside, just because they're so strong and they can be really damaging to the microbiome. The other thing about an essential oil is that one drop is so much raw product. So again, just thinking of the sustainability of the medicines of the planet, it's also something to keep in mind. Using that diffusing that to stop the virus, maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't read anything about it. I mean, I love essential oils, and again, it's another one that I'm kind of cautious to say, hey, use this because, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question. Jude, elderberry. Yeah, so it's interesting. Elderberry, elderflower. So I'm more partial to elderflower. Elderberry is good, but I think a herbalist needs to be prescribing that more than elderflower is probably the place you could go to without any danger, because I think elderberry's got a few extra bits going onto it. I'm reminding you of Jacinda Ardern, Rebecca Horn. I love you. I love Jacinda Ardern. I'm so excited that you think I'm looking like her. Thanks. That's my pleasure, loves. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for the initiative of the Pandaversity. I'm looking forward to learning heaps myself. If you do me a favour and go and like my professional Sally Mathrick page, if you know anyone who is needing some additional support, send them my way. I'm a self-employed, well, I'm working for a university for another few weeks, but after that I'll be self-employed. And so, yeah, so I'm happy to help. I like doing this work, and I've been practicing for a while. And I work as well with women who are transitioning through menopause. I've got like a $20 live chat with small groups of women, and that's also on the little rave. So if you know anyone who needs some help transitioning from 40 to 60 as a woman, then please send them my way as well. And thanks. I think that's it. Lickety split. All right, stay well, guys. Look after each other. Yeah, love you guys too. Thanks. Bye.